Hello, hello, hello. It's okay. Don't worry about it. I'm all right. Thank you. No, I think I'm good. Hmm. Hey,
Hello, how are you?
how are
I'm
you?
functioning well. Thank you. How can I help?
My machines are talking all over the
Yeah,
place.
I know, machines.
Hey, Steve,
Hey, Brian.
I just tripped the circuit breaker. I'll be right back.
Oh, okay. Hey, Paul. How's it going?
Good, how are you?
Good, not bad. Let's see. Yes. Read this kind. Hey, Frida.
Can anybody hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah. Okay, I just got a supposed to be on my buds, but it's not.
I'll be in and out. I'll be listening mostly.
Okay. Thank you for letting us know.
Hmm.
Um, I should explain. I have to apologize. I'm at the Canadian Hypnosis Conference, and I was originally booked to speak later, but when I got here, they have me right at 1:30. So I'm literally gonna. I have to sort of like stop at 80 minutes, I guess, and I'll take an elevator and rush into the conference room. I apologize, but I couldn't
Well, let
get them to move it back. Uh,
let's not rush the subjects, okay?
yeah.
Like
Uh,
if we got to do more later, okay.
well, what I was going to suggest, anyways. Well, the last next week's our last session, and we're going to do people. Like we're going to work with people, and that usually goes longer anyways. So, and if we want, if people feel there's something that they really want to, they're not getting or they're not understanding, you can please contact me, and we'll figure out how to sort of bring you up to speed. Um, yeah, I tried to. It's a bit of a. There's a lot of things going on at this conference, so I'm in glorious at the airport hotel in Toronto. Um, Everyone can hear me okay?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, good. Um, so actually, I had a really interesting. I was going to start off. We're going to cover the bulk of today, or bulk, but we'll get into different things. Is to really look at the question of applications, meaning if you're able to create erotic hypnotic states, uh, there's like actually quite a large host of applications. Um, and so we're going to look at the more concrete ones today and the best way that uh, you should or could apply yourself. Um, I had a very interesting conversation with Frida, who had kind of had some good questions, and this interesting thing came up, which I just thought it's worth answering. The question was, what kind of people should be doing erotic hypnosis? Sort of an interesting question. Uh, and what's interesting is that it's not, I would say the answer, and obviously it's an opinionated answer, it's my opinion, um, is uh, is not initially what you'd think, because you might think, well, sexy people or attractive people or people who are very pro-sexual. Yes, those might be good characteristics, but I really narrowed it down. I'm curious what people think about this. There's sort of three qualities. I'll share them on screen. Let me just uh, share a screen for a second because they're kind of interesting. Uh, so I think the three key qualities of somebody who can do erotic hypnosis or who should be doing erotic hypnosis are the person can make people feel safe. Now, this is an interesting thing. When I started doing this course, I actually used to think, and I still do partially, that actually what creates the state for hypnotic orgasm is actually safety. So, meaning it is the act of making people feel safe, uh, both in the context that they feel that the process is maybe safe to them and that you are guiding them, but also that the trance induces a state of safety uh, by promoting deep relaxation, loss of inhibition. I would still say that this is a really I'm kind of halfway in the middle. I abandoned that thinking only because the evidence seems to be that what really creates hypnotic orgasms is the transposition of dream sexual orgasmic dream states moved into the trance state. I mean, that's just the practical reality that seems to make it happen through the somnambulant trance. However, I have learned that both of these things are true, and it is really valuable that you approach it this way, meaning that even if you are doing the most intense or wildest or sexiest, sorry, kind of work, that still making people feel safe is a key factor. And is not just, again, it's not just moral, it actually produces the state best explained. We covered it basically last week, but when the body feels really safe, when the person feels really comfortable, when they feel super relaxed, that the orgasm can sometimes happen just spontaneously and naturally.
Well, this is sort of true in real life too.
Like you
Like
mean
if
in
people
real
feel
life?
safe,
Oh,
they have a better time.
you're right. Actually, you mean in regular, what we'd call
In
regular
real
sex?
life, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. But here's the other thing too. It's important to also mean it. So let me explain what I mean. This is more a predicament that women, I think, face more often, which is that of course, a guy might be telling them that you want to feel that you're safe and everything's fine, but that there's um, a plan or that there is a bigger agenda that the woman may not know about. I think this happens to women a lot. Just it's sort of the structure of our culture. So the point is that it's not just that you make people feel safe, but that you also mean it. That you are going to follow through. You're not expecting when you produce a beautiful sexual experience for somebody, you're not expecting something necessarily in return uh, beyond whatever you've figured out or negotiated. So this is the big one. But here's the second one that's actually critical too, and I think this is interesting. That it's important to be a good storyteller. Now, why does this matter? Because we live in a culture that does not would not agree. The culture would say no. The people who deserve or who are engaged in sexual behavior are physically attractive, are sexy looking, uh, can speak in sexy ways. But actually, the values of erotic hypnosis are actually quite different. They don't require that people be sexy. They don't require that people look sexy. Why is this interesting? Well, because this is applications for people that are, let's say, older, or not, or obviously for people who don't fit conventional norms of sexiness, or what the culture considers sexy. Any comments or questions on this? I'm sure people might have a take on this.
One thing I picked up from when we were with Clara was that it really brought through to me that people are beautiful inside. Really did. You know, I thought it doesn't matter what she looks like because I can sense the literal radiant beauty coming out because she's happy.
Actually, that's a good point. I would say Clara is, a beautiful woman, but that let's say it was somebody who was not maybe didn't look the same way.
Right.
When the orgasm would probably have a similar magic. I think you're right. That's a very powerful observation. I agree with that totally. Um, and yeah, and that shows sort of like what we're trying to do here, which is that um, we're trying to escape from the kind of rules and confines of a culture that is very specific about the way it defines sexuality, um, not always for the better. Now, the third characteristic I would put in, and it's funny because I just think it's there. I'm not sure necessarily, well, I could guess why, but there's a certain boldness. I think it helps people that both, I think the ability to command somebody to go into trance is bold. It's the power to manage somebody through various states is bold, but also even to sort of, I think part of the role of the sexual storyteller is to tell a bold story. I think sex is bold. I don't know, but it doesn't have to be. I think it can be gentle and nice, but there's a bold quality to it. And we find boldness sexy in the right context. I just found it was interesting. If you remove boldness from this list, there seemed to be something missing. Um,
I think that for someone to feel safe, they have to also be confident in you, and confidence comes from being bold and being forthright,
mm,
um, giving them the sense that yes, you know what you're doing, as well as being safe.
yeah. Yes. Yeah.
So I would not say bold so much as some sort of being trusted and forthright. I guess I don't know how to describe it, but it's more than just bold. It's giving them a sense of you are trustworthy and you know that this will work.
Yeah.
You know,
Yes.
I don't,
Expresses confidence, and I think is and genuine
yes, competence, that's it.
confidence and competence. Um, okay. Any comments or questions about this? So so I jokingly call this what we're kind of headed towards is escape from genitalia, as if there would be a film called Escape from Genitalia, but that there's a huge advantage, even though I don't want to pretend that I'm not pretending that people don't like good feelings in their genitals, that the culture works from the inspiration, stimulation of sexual organs. And we say that it really is all in the mind anyways. And sort of the point of why uh, the being a good storyteller also has a sort of inspiring side, is that it shows that people of any age, and I think there's something charming and real about, you know, that that famously couples as they age become less sexual. One, maybe less desire, but also there's a sense that it just becomes harder to do because it's so genital driven. If erotic hypnosis really is ultimately storytelling, then all you need to be to please your partner is a good storyteller. And that means people, this is another aspect, people that have disabilities um,
Well,
can,
speaking to that, no joke here. It's impossible for me. So we'll see.
right. We're going to actually, we'll get into that today. I have some questions about that today. Um, right. So there's people that might simply, they can't, let's say, and the words are always strange. You can say the words like perform, but it's a strange word. But uh, people, um, uh, sorry, where was I going with this? That the terminology itself is often difficult when describing sexual performance. But if the performance is just the ability to tell a story well and make somebody feel safe, this has universal applications to just particularly for older people, particularly for disabled people, and also can be people that just may not be in the mood. That's the other factor. They're just not maybe in a physical mood to engage in sexuality. Sorry. Um, okay. So let me jump ahead. So uh, I was going to talk today about one of the practical applications, and I'll tell you a story about how it sort of, which is the shamegasm. So it's kind of, I don't know if anybody's seen this show. It was a Netflix hit called Baby Reindeer. A really interesting, great series. What's intriguing about it, and there was this episode where I'll tell you sort of the sequence of events. So in a previous class, I mentioned the show. In the show, it's about this guy who is stalked by horribly stalked by a woman who barrages him with emails, interferes with his life at every step. And at first, you think it can't be so bad, but it really becomes a nightmare. And she's very aggressive, and she's nasty, and she's not a nice person. She's not attractive. Uh, Anyways, make a long story short, there's a dramatic scene where the main character, who's this guy you're looking at, hasn't masturbates himself to orgasm, looking at pictures of her, and he is filled with shame afterwards and is so shocked and horrified, and he attributes this to his sort of childhood trauma and sexual dysfunction, but he doesn't um, it never goes deeper than that. And so in our last group, there were a bunch of us who talked about this, and there was one of the guys had a really remarkable story. And I should just tell you the story because it resonated with some of the other men. And I'm not excluding women from this because women just sometimes have a different take, slightly different take. So his story was that he came from a Catholic upbringing, not heavily Catholic, probably middle of the road American Catholic upbringing. When he was 13, he discovered masturbation. And he described this experience where his first time ever having an orgasm, which is interesting from a hypnosis point of view because we really believe that initiating experiences are extremely powerful. The first time of anything is very powerful. So he has a super powerful orgasm, and then he describes having a blanket of shame. And the blanket of shame was kind of two powerful thoughts. Uh, One, that he was thinking that maybe even though he didn't literally believe that masturbation would cause you to go to hell, part of him did. And so he felt this enormous fear that he was going to hell, and he felt a lot of shame right there. Fast forward through the story is that later in life, this guy very honestly told stories of how he basically began to cheat on his wife, often, and the common denominator was very thrilling, dangerous, and shameful experiences. So, meaning he would he slept with somebody at work he really shouldn't sleep with. He did things secretly, and part of the thrill was the secretiveness. Sorry, secretive secretiveness of it. I apologize, can't say the word. Um, anyways, the long and the short of it was we identified that the way that he experienced orgasms required that there be a shame component. And so what's interesting there is that, and we kind of went through all of it and we sort of said, well, how does this affect your love life? Well, we said, I'm not that attracted to my wife because there's no shame. And I'm not turned on, there's no shame component. Um, so this had caused him enormous amounts, him and his wife, enormous amounts of suffering. They had almost divorced. They'd gone to counseling and therapy. Counseling and therapy had not been that effective until we kind of looked at this. And so this is so what emerged was a bit of a protocol. I would call it a protocol, but I'm hasn't been done on a lot of people to know if it works. But the protocol was, if your original orgasmic experience has a traumatic component, which many people's do, and his was simply that as a good Catholic boy, he was terrified of crossing this barrier into orgasm, that what it makes sense, and that the orgasmic state and the traumatic state fused. The brain learns. It particularly learns about trauma because it thinks it's important, so it avoids future trauma. So it may be that he learned that this is the way that he experiences orgasm. And then he seeks to recreate it. It becomes his sexuality. And the only thing he can increase is probably the shame component. And he loses interest in maybe more loving or even just a wider range of sexual experience because there's no shame. So what did we do? And I'll tell you an embarrassing story. When he told his story, I was like, and I'm curious if anybody else has stories like this here too. I realized I had a very similar story. I didn't come from a Catholic family, but I remember just feeling uncomfortable around sexuality. And I discovered my first orgasm taking a bath. Kind of happened almost spontaneously. I remember it being mind blowing and powerful, but I immediately felt this sort of blanket of shame, which is intriguing because there's a physiological reason why that happens, which is called the refractory state, which is that men following orgasm lose interest in sex quickly. That's a kind of depressive moment. And what I think can happen is if you're already ready to feel guilt and shame, and then you have this physiological state rush in, it becomes more powerful for that reason. And the brain rationalizes its states and goes, oh, the reason why I feel kind of down isn't because this is a normal physiological reaction. It's because I'm ashamed of what I just did. Anyways, what happened to me was, being like a 13-year-old ignoramus, I was terrified that I could get my sister and my mother pregnant because I had ejaculated in the bathtub. And I remember scrubbing the bathtub, and then somebody was knocking on the door, and I was thinking, geez, I didn't have enough time to clean the bathtub. And then, so make a long story short, I even had this like hallucination of my father going, "Oh my God, you got your mother pregnant," you know.
Wow.
So when he told the shamegasm story, I was like, "Oh shit, I have, I have one too." And then
Your brain sure ran with that one.
what's that?
Your brain sure took that one and ran.
Yeah, it really, yes, it did. Because I really did almost hallucinate. Ohm, go ahead.
Just a adjacent question, not directly related to shame, but you mentioned something here about like the shift that happens. When the men particularly have this thing about, even the red pill guys will call it post nut clarity, which I know is a crass expression. But they talk about how quickly the brain shifts for men after we orgasm. And actually, I was actually thinking about this earlier in terms of you had said in our very first class, and I'm still kind of grappling with this, that maybe all arousal is a trance state.
Yes.
And I'm like, that's a really interesting premise to work with. But if all arousal is a trance state, um, again, then this should happen in both sexes, but maybe male orgasm ejaculation is so external and it's so definitive that the orgasm and ejaculation very abruptly ends the trance state.
You're right. That's a very
And it
powerful.
ends the trance state, and then we like wake up and we're in an entirely different reality. Because what was beautiful, enchanting, what we were invested in, our entire desire framework, matrix, while we are in the arousal state, is this thing. And as soon as, and ejaculation, let's say basically, woof, trance state gone. And we're like, oh my God, this is my reality. I just woke up from the holodeck.
Totally.
Because
That's a
it
very
can be really abrupt. So,
Well, that happens too when you
even
suddenly realize.
relating even relating to your idea, so maybe it is orgasm has gotten attached to shame, or it's that the shame is living in the quote unquote non-arousal real state, and as soon as you pop the bubble, it's like you come out of the trapdoor, and shame is waiting for you outside of arousal. I'm just
Let's not
trying to.
let's not forget, yeah, all those nasty chemicals that are driving you possibly to do something that in the cold light of day you might not do with this person.
well. I actually I really think that's um, a very powerful observation that the arousal, and because we've probably experienced this where you're extremely aroused by some either by the experience or what's going on,
Yeah.
and then when the orgasm happens, you're like, my God, what was I so worried
Yeah.
about?
So this would specifically be the case if people have so-called kinks, which
Yeah.
means your arousal, your enchantment is created by fantasizing about your brother or sister, and your non-arousal state clearly knows that's gross and you shouldn't do it. So it's like the transfer that's going to happen post-orgasm is from one set of ethics to another set of ethics, one set of what works to another set of that is unacceptable. And that discrepancy would create shame that what I enjoy in arousal is absolutely wrong in non arousal, which could be a real headfuck.
I should add in the bit of the science. Now, I don't think this is a kind of an example of really established science, but the explanation for the refractory period is, and one of the theories is that um, I don't know if I mentioned this before, but it's important to remind people that when if you're having sexual intercourse for procreation, that once the man has ejaculated, it's not a good idea from a procreation point of view for the penis to go right back in and mess things up. So we evolved, it's part of evolution for the male to actually depress for half an hour or an hour so that literally so the sperm can go up the fallopian tubes and do its thing. So that state, and this evolved, so there needs to be a powerful state because men are hyper aroused often, and then they need to be hyper not aroused. And so I think that feeling can be depressing. But you know what I think? Sorry, what's intriguing here? If we're saying that erotic hypnosis can give us access to arousal states, which I think it can, obviously, meaning they can be modified in trance, then maybe even this other state could be. I've had that experience too, where because I've noticed the depressing aspect of the refractory state, I I've noticed if I think positively through it, I feel great. I think about how much I love the person I'm with, or I think there is a way to make the most of that state. But I think often it's a negative experience for people. I think it turns to gloom and like what the hell have I been doing? Kind of feeling. So sorry, anybody else have anything to say about this? Because I will move on, but go ahead. Yes, Paul.
Yeah, just wanted to ask, so do you know if someone is in a deep trance, a male, and let's say you have them, they have an orgasm, like a regular orgasm. Do you, can you still continue the scene? Like, is there still a sort of post, is there a refractory period there, or can you do like more of the like non-penile orgasms after that? Like, does it fully wake them up? Like he was saying, a normal orgasm, you have a refractory period that kind of disrupts that? Or do they stay in deep trance if they
Yeah,
have
so
a ejaculatory orgasm, I mean?
yeah, so I think if I was to rephrase your question, I would say, let's say you have a male in deep somnambulant trance, and you hypnotize them to have a powerful they have a full-blown ejaculatory orgasm. Would they then depress and settle down for a while, or could the states continue? And I would say the answer is, if in deep trance, because it breaks the rules, I think they would still have that elevator down feeling, but I think you could continue. And my experience is that that men see, I haven't really explored like powerful direct ejaculation, so that is the I'm just not sure, but I would say that men can more or less do what women can do in somnambulant trance, meaning they can just keep going. But I think that still, if there wasn't ejaculation, there would be a challenge there.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just curious because I know I know some guys online that talk about like delaying orgasm or just doing like chastity, like they don't want, not doing it for a long time. The way they describe the mental state, it sounds a lot like some type of trance. Like they really have a different mental state because they're delayed or denied so long and they sort of develop different kinks or things that they're interested in that they weren't before, that the focus is very different mentally. But
I mean, this is stuff that's taught
yeah,
in Tantra too, that yeah, restraining from orgasm, it can be its own thing. But
yeah.
what I think we're on here is this idea that if you can if you can make the arousal state flexible, you can make the de-arousal state flexible too, maybe. Although I would say there's a completely different game. The arousal state is an intense trance. It's a very powerful trance. The de-arousal state is a really different animal. I really think it is like you disassociate. You're not particularly focused. You're just kind of all over the place for a little while before you can
Be
get.
hard to say, really. I think it would really depend on the person, the
Yeah,
trance, all the things around it.
yeah, that would be fair too. So let me just continue. I'll continue quick, unless there's other comments or questions. I'll continue quickly with the Shanegasm, and I'll explain what was done and why it worked because it's intriguing. So the Shanegasm uh, uh, is you can look at it the way you might look at anyone with a traumatic history, meaning somebody has a particular trauma that's like a block, and there's an established way in hypnosis to look at that kind of thing. So we sort of ask the question, would it make sense to do this with so let me give you a thumbnail version of it. The theory is that when people have undischarged trauma, so for example, this guy has this trauma where he thinks he's going to go hell when he has sex or has orgasms, his unconscious replays that and actually seeks to discharge it, but it does it by sort of bubbling it up. So this is why people continue to act out the thing that they're traumatized by. So he actually is, in a sense, searching for shamegasms because he had a shamegasm way back then. The goal of the unconscious is actually to release the shame, to release the fear that's associated with the shame. That's what the unconscious is trying to do. But yes, Brian.
Okay, and so this would all be covered in pre-talk, I would think.
Yeah, this is a, I would call this a very advanced protocol, but it is worth knowing about, and it is something that you might consider doing down the line because the actual next part is complicated and has risks. The risks are not severe, but you want to know about them. So I won't give you the whole because I don't want to waste time, but or use a ton of time. But it's an interesting, uh, it's a big story in a sense. But uh, yeah, so to answer your question, uh, you can. I think it is possible. Sorry, I'm actually not answering your question, just explaining a little bit more. It is possible to actually fully heal somebody in this situation. And so this is how it's done. The person would have to be forthright and tell you about their story. You'd have to identify that there really is a shamegasm phenomena. But I don't know. I'm curious what other men think. My reading is like half of men have some version of this. Gay men too, have some version of it.
Certainly women do.
Women, it's complicated by that women often also have the shame component to their physical, the way they show up, to their bodies, the way they feel. So it's just different. But I think yes, women do too. Women do too. Um,
And it's,
Paul.
yeah, I'm just kind of curious because I feel the way you're describing it, it almost sounds like the examples that you gave, both yours and the other person, that there was it's basically just cultural stuff that you've picked up. Your mind has picked up over time. And then when you had the first orgasm, your mind sort of played in an aspect of shame, but there wasn't really an external event at that same time. Like, I guess I was thinking when you're talking about a trauma, like your Catholic mother catches you and beats you after because she's trying to teach you that it's wrong or something, right? Like that to me is more, but what you're talking about more is like a cultural, um, basically your expectation that you didn't have anyone to tell you that it's normal and you should feel okay. You know
It's
what I mean, or whatever,
yeah.
it's like it's more just an expectation that the guy had going in, you know what I mean? And then when he did it, it was like, oh, this doesn't feel good. Even, I mean, it felt good, but it felt, I guess, also shameful.
It's an interesting example of how just a cultural thought could be so damaging because sometimes people like you're right, having your mom burst in would be far more traumatic, or being sexually interfered with as a child would be far more traumatic.
Mhm.
But I
Right,
think that one of the rules in trauma is if it sort of like if it works like a trauma, it probably is a trauma.
right.
So yeah, I agree. Like, and that, my experience too of the bathtub, it was not, there was nobody traumatizing me, but I definitely beat myself up. And
Right,
what
right.
I think is important is it might stunt or affect somebody's sexual outcomes because um, I think we live in a world where people are, you may experience this where people are like, I only have this narrow window of things that arouse me, and that is because you the way your sexuality was forged, the first few orgasms took a particular path, uh, and there's no room for flexibility.
But also like you're picking up from the culture that, there's one right way to do it. Or, like you maybe developed a negative sense of something because of external stuff, whereas you could enjoy it if you didn't learn to associate it with shame or that's not right or whatever.
Yeah, and I would also agree that the problem is not that you have shamegasm. There's nothing wrong with maybe having a shamegasm once in a while. It's that it's taken over your sexuality. Um,
Okay, right.
yeah. In the show, the guy is just mortified, and he throws up his hands and does not understand why this is so arousing, but it was because this woman is so bad for him. She's such a bad person in his life. Why is she so sexy? So it's that's what I remember being struck by in the show. So okay, let me give you the protocol, and I should mention to you that it worked. Or I mean, I think initially it's clear that it worked. So there's a standard approach the name is unfortunately intimidating, but it's not indicative of the process so much. The protocol is called the visual kinesthetic dissociation protocol. It is a way to discharge trauma. It's also called the RTM method for PTSD. And basically, what you do is, um, so in this case, we took we took the person who told the story of being 13, having an orgasm, and set, and he was also good at going into trance, put him into trance, had him recreate the story, and this time the difference is, so in this protocol you actually run a movie. You run a movie and you try to target the negative tag. And for this guy, the negative tag was the
So,
blanket of shame. It was very clear in his head that I was like,
so he's not recreating it, you are.
you're walking him through it. That's right, in the trance. That's right. And so the difference is then you then run the movie for him in his life, or you have him imagine it, but this time you affect the blanket of shame. There's a standard trick in the protocol, you just might find it interesting, where you remove all the color and you shrink it down so it's a tiny little dot, and then you might put it away in a museum, or some people throw it in the ocean. And the idea is to actually mess with the way the memory is tagged. This protocol is very powerful. It can de-traumatize the most powerful forms of PTSD. It doesn't always work, but it works a lot. Uh, anyways, when that guy did that, it was extremely powerful. That he then, because of this principle of memory reconsolidation, which is the ability for the brain to create new memories, he then re-remembers the original orgasm without the blanket of shame. The blanket of shame is still there. It might have happened, but instead the focus is on, wow, did my body ever feel good? Did it ever feel magical and possible? It's a portal to incredible experiences. I can't wait to share this with somebody I love. Or, it can be manipulated in a way that is healthy and helpful to the person. If you've been doing erotic hypnosis work with that person, you could then also run the whole thing with, you'd suggest to them, let's re-experience it, but now no blanket of shame. So this time you experience an actual hypnotic orgasm, but you feel very, very proud, very, very healthy, all the things that you have worked out in pre-talk that are great. And then you go through the whole thing. And this time it reconsolidates in a healthy and positive way. And so this guy did it. And he said that right after that, he and his wife really felt, it wasn't that he went, because I'd love to say he went and made love to his wife and it was wonderful and fantastic. It's more that he went back to his wife and realized that there was all this possibility, that he had been blocked, he'd been convinced that he wasn't attracted to his wife, and now he realized he could be. And that could also be the next step of this work if you need to re-increase arousal around somebody the person loves. So
I have a quick question about that protocol.
yeah.
So let's say if someone doesn't necessarily remember a specific experience like that, but just like the general, they picked up some judgment around sex and they want to let go of that or some, like would you still do a type of a similar protocol, but just imagine not like maybe, one experience that you had with sex, but just like to develop more of an association of sex and less judgment or, something better. Could you still do the same thing, I guess?
um Yeah, I would say, like, when you do these kind of protocols, there's a lot of fussing about whether something's actually a trauma or not, because it behaves differently. Like a negative
Okay.
experience is very different from a trauma. So I'd say, but I would say, like, to answer your question, I'm just trying to maybe, it seems to me you have lots of choices. Like you can still, there's an interesting theory of emotions, that emotions are all telling are often you can often play the game of opposites. So if the person has shame around a particular act, then you redo it with pride because pride is the opposite of shame. Uh, or confidence or whatever. And because of the flexibility of the erotic hypnotic state, you can, all that's possible. I don't know if that's answering, but maybe do you want to see if you can drill down a bit and explain it a little more clearly?
Sure. Yeah, I guess if, and I guess maybe it's more, I think, true for women, but that you're taught that, you're not really supposed to be too sexual. And so you consciously, you suppress it basically. And so like just going into a deep trance, is that alone enough? And then the person doesn't, at least while they're there, they're not, self-censoring and self-judging, or if you wanted to help someone really let go of that, like help them get really into a turned on state and have like permission to do that.
Yeah, I think
Um,
I,
without feeling, you know what I mean? Like, because everybody learns that. I mean, and it's normal. Like, of course, if you're at work, yeah, you can't just, you know what I mean? You can't always be sexual or something, right? You have to turn it down.
but I
You
think you're
can't,
identifying.
but like, yeah, yeah.
I, I think it's well explained. I think you're identifying something really interesting, which is I think that the culture has a trope that anybody seeking sex is somehow bad. That you remember it's just an idea. It's like even in I've been to some very progressive or enlightened events and conferences, and still there's a still teasing around the person who's horny or whatever is always maligned.
Yeah,
And so this and that's it's hypocritical because all of us are horny some of the time, so it's hypocritical of us to make it look, and we participate in, also the stigmatization of creepy people, which might be fair, but it's still maligning desire, this natural desire. And it also fits with the way religion shames people for their sexuality. It happens to resonate very well with that. But I just think you're onto something very original here, which is that can we give people room, and I think you described it just to say it is okay for you to have desire, and not only that, it is beautiful and healthy and a sign of life, and maybe go even a step further and say your desire is beautiful. Uh, it seems that is easier in these arenas because um, it is a safe space where there's lots of room, flexibility. Uh, but yeah, okay. So the point of the shamegasm is that this sort of protocol can apply to anything else that might be. I think that a lot of people's sexual tastes are unfortunately trauma based. Sexual interference might be the other angle where somebody, I mean, I know some people who like can only enjoy rough sex because that's what happened to them, or that's what they think what happened to them. So could that be changed this way? This would be the one way that I would know that you'd approach it. Discharge the original trauma, and then another session where you explore a new way of being. Brian, you're talking about your mic.
so the method is to make it smaller and less significant,
If you,
dwindling away to a pinpoint or something.
yeah, it's a just to be careful. Like it's a beautiful, beautiful protocol. It's really powerful. You because it's not really in the purview of this course, you may want to learn it separately. Um,
Yeah.
it's also called the fast rewind release. It has different names.
Well, it's okay. I won't be going there for some time, I'm sure, because there's a lot of things to learn from this course already.
Mhm. It's just exciting. Also, to me, it implies that like these are the great dilemmas in sexuality. People who are fixated on this is the only way they can be aroused, or they can't be changed, or and just when if people could know that, well, there's obviously some flexibility, and that this is the same thing with trauma. That trauma is a story that people repeat in their heads over and over again, so they think it's true. So meaning I'm an angry person or I'm a depressed person or whatever it is, if that's trauma based and you get rid of the trauma, the person's wide open for change. Uh, so anything's possible. Um, okay, so I thought it would be a good time to talk about anything else on shamegasm. We're good. So let's talk about ED, if that's right, erectile dysfunction. I've had male clients come to me for ED, um, and I don't want to. I don't want to pretend that I have big expertise. I really don't, but I think it's obviously uh, an interesting, important issue that um, can also be faced positively. Meaning,
I'm happy to speak to that.
yeah. Sorry, Brian, did you want to
Uh,
say
what can I say except I had all my testosterone removed in order to kill prostate cancer, and it hasn't come back, and I'm really hoping it starts to. There's some questions. It's been 6 months, I think, almost since meds theoretically stopped. And I'd hoped to have that come back because it's also bad for your muscles and all sorts of other things. And so the thing that they really didn't mention was it just friggin' totals your libido also. That is the big shock. And that happened slowly but surely. It followed the physical problem, and then, which was irritating when you still have a libido with the physical problem. And then things lightened up because the libido just totally, it's hard for guys to imagine, but it totally and utterly disappeared. My joke about it is about the hormonal imbalance is that my wife's going to leave me if I keep redecorating and buying shoes. So
it?
anyway, I try to joke about it, and I would really like that back, but it's got serious chemistry going on here, not just psychological. So anyway, welcome to speak about it or talk about it to me. Sure.
What I can suggest is that Dominique Laroche, who worked on this documentary with me, had a client, worked with a client who had had serious ED due to spinal injury and did recover function. Uh, and she might just have a different take than I do. What so let me explain my take on dealing with ED and also different kinds of what you might call dysfunction is that the number one thing that hypnosis can do that is powerful in these states is slow things down. Sounds funny, but um, often by definition, it's an interesting thing. When people have problems like this, they are impatient. And you see that they attach stress. And when I've had ED clients, I've noticed every one of them is stressed. They're stressed talking about their ED. They're stressed, like as they begin talking about it, they get into a stress state. So you notice that the thing, they're kind of a little bit part and parcel. Um,
Might be
now,
different. I wouldn't say that I'm any longer stressed about it because this is pure chemical biology, and I'm just going,
yeah,
well, we'll see.
the protocol is a bit of a grandiose term for this, but the strategy that I've used and is helpful for ED is um, is starting real slow. Um, the because by definition, this rush to erection is itself like a stress challenge. Meaning, if somebody told you you have 1,000 years to get an erection, you just wouldn't worry about it because you got 1,000 years. But if you have only a few minutes, that's a completely different game. And so
But
one, sorry, go ahead.
let's not forget either that I really don't give a shit about the erection now. It's more about the orgasm.
Right, right. So there's an interesting challenge here. So what I would say is one, so the strategy is get the person into as deep trance as you can. Two, take it very, very slowly. The reason is that things can gather and you're trying to avoid going back into the stress response that is common in these situations. Three, there's something interesting about catalepsy. I have often wondered that cataleptic trance, so we did those trances initially with tightened fingers and things like that, bears resemblances to erections. Um, is it the same thing? Because it's funny, I haven't done this experiment, but you can create full body catalepsy. So this is done all the time. I might have some pictures of examples, but in 19th century hypnosis shows, they used to do full body catalepsy all the time, where they would uh, hypnotize people and then they'd walk across them in, I don't think I have examples here. Um, they would walk across them to show how physically solid they were.
Your screen is only showing half screen.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just trying to find the right. Thank you for letting me know, but I'm just trying to find the right. I thought I had the right one, but I don't. But you've probably seen these sort of old black and white pictures of people held between two chairs. So the explanation is that, so this is how you would do it. You would invite somebody on stage, you tell them to stick out their arms. They're given hypnotic suggestions that their arms are very solid and steel-like and strong, and that they are stiffening up, stiffer, stiffer, stiffer. And as they become more and more solid, they actually just become rock solid. And the theory is that when you get when you get a cataleptic state, the person is in trance. So I cannot help but wonder that if you wanted to sort of get to the erection angle, that you might be able to culture the chemistry of it by recreating cataleptic trances. Because the erection itself seems to be like a cataleptic trance, but an unconscious one.
See, I'm more looking at, okay, so that's a physical phenomena. Um, Whereas I feel it's probably possible to have an orgasm without that.
Yes, that's right.
So concentrating on the physical, I would believe that might be a lot harder, actually.
So
Uh,
if you don't mind, let me just finish with the ED angle, and then yeah, then let's continue with the orgasm. I just see them as they're sort of slightly different things. Um, so the last thing I'm going to say about this is that one of the other strategies with ED is that because erection is actually largely like if you think about it, I guess I'm asking the men, but for the women too, but if you think about getting an erection, it's not usually a totally conscious thought, though you can modify it consciously. So that's kind of crazy, but um, if you've got a person into trance, they can explore the way they remember their erections coming on. And part of the idea is to see if you can get some conscious control, because to a certain extent, men can learn conscious control. So getting some conscious control of the process is a way to create erections that you may never be able to do before. And maybe the last thing I should say about this too is that the other part of anything you do in hypnosis is yes, you want dramatic, bold results, but it's also important to start anywhere. Meaning, if somebody is getting some basic result, but it's very minor and they can't feel a lot and it's subtle, that's still very good because of this impatience factor. If they're going, I thought I would have a rock hard erection by now, that's self sabotage. And if you can just start somewhere through the process, you're likely to get response and reaction. Brian? Oh, okay. Um, so Now the second question, can somebody who's not, can somebody without an erection, can a man without an erection have an orgasm? I am sure it's true. And
And without testosterone, etc.
yes. So let's look at the let's try to map it out. Actually, let me ask anyone if anyone has a take on this. How would you do this? If somebody came to you and said, um, "I'd like to have an orgasm without an erection," what would you do?
I think as we talked maybe in the first class that you don't focus on genitals, you just focus on feelings of arousal and build feelings of arousal and arousal and arousal. And it's a very tantric concept that orgasm doesn't have to be genital based. The whole idea of a full body orgasm is you can have a very good feeling in the whole body and it can be orgasmic, but it's not localized.
Yes.
And you can, I
How
think
did,
you can still, so I also coach men who have been through surgeries and have lost capacity to, and I completely sympathize. But so much of my training has been about non-erections and non-penetration sex. BDSM, you don't need to take your underwear off for BDSM. You have to have an amazing scene. So entire realm of BDSM is brilliant at non-penetrative eros. And so much of Tantra is about touch, arousal. So yes, you may have lost your erection, testosterone. Do you still have feeling in your nipples? Do you still have feeling in your perineum? Does your asshole still feel good? Do your lips still feel good? Your body is alive. Your body is
now
full of
that's
sensation.
good points there.
And so you can start with the sensation and expand the sensation and almost still use the erogenous zones as
Hmm.
places of nerve endings and start with the nerve endings and then expand the sensation from there through hypnosis. I haven't done quite that yet, but I've seen demos.
That
I've seen.
sounds like a very good bath.
Yeah.
It reminds me, if I can throw in one thing too, an interesting principle. I've noticed through my work that I sort of have this rule about self-sabotage, that when people are in the business of self-sabotaging themselves, they are usually trying to go through one door, meaning there's only, so they've given themselves an idea. You realize talking to them that they'll only be happy, for example, with ED, if they have a rock solid erection. And so that pattern, I mean, so if they get halfway there, they're not happy. If there's a hint of it, they're not happy. If there's a different way in, they're not happy because they've given themselves this rule that they must achieve this one thing. And that is a pattern with all self-sabotage. It's this, if there's only one door and you can't go through the door, you're not going to succeed. So I like what Om was just saying, which is that there's so many other choices, and it's mindset as well. Uh, Different ways of thinking about it, and even about the orgasm. Now, it doesn't mean that you abandon the goal. It doesn't mean that you're not trying to achieve. Let's say we decide, like, I really do want to achieve an orgasm because orgasms are great, but that initially approaching it with working workarounds or other strategies. Like, I'll give you an example. What I was going to suggest: if the person um, is able to go into trance, and if the person can experience arousal, you would ask them to focus and concentrate on ideas, imagery, scenes that they find arousing. Then you might uh, add effect doubling, because effect doubling is powerful. And then you might add um, looping. So the more you see that, the more aroused you get, because this is all safe space stuff. It's rare that somebody gets this in a situation where they're like, "Hey, just go and get turned on. Just allow yourself to feel really aroused. I'm keeping you safe." If the person if the person is there for you and is doing that work, then you are just lying there kind of getting aroused. And that's all good. So there are a lot of options there, I would say. Um, I have a practical suggestion, which is that maybe um, Dominique, who's done this work, I'll suggest that if she's free, I don't know if she is, that she come to the next session and maybe see what she could do. Um, and so yeah, so that would be a kind of practical. But I'm curious if anybody else has a strategy that they would take for just getting to orgasm for somebody who feels that it's really hard.
Feels like quite the giant hole, like a missing piece, you know.
Um, I can throw one. Yeah, I can see that. I would throw in another thing, which is that in hypnosis we do revivification. So revivification is bringing back to life a previous state. So I'm not sure that this is necessarily the greatest strategy, but it is interesting. So you would say, can you remember a really powerful orgasm that you had, a really good orgasm that you had? And usually a person can. And then in trance, we go back to that state. What was going on? What were you feeling? What were you doing? And you probably get parts of it back. Um, this is how I've done hypnotic ayahuasca, where I get people to focus on a particular memory from the ayahuasca experience and then revivify. And it's like a doorway into the bigger experience. So going back to a particular orgasm or even anything that's like a positive state that you had recently can be revivified, effect doubled, looped, etc. Anybody
Did
else?
have some dreams in which everything was good.
You have had dreams that everything is good?
They're like rock solid,
Interesting. So,
and I remember them. That was nice.
yes, yes. So I guess would it make sense to go in trance back to those dreams?
Don't know.
What if you don't mind, why don't we try right now? Why don't we just do a quick like my like as a I'm not expecting you to go deep, but just a quick see if you can go there and if there's anything else more there.
All right. My wife is home, but I'm isolated out in a sunroom. Should be
Okay.
okay.
Yeah, this will only be 5 minutes, so very quick. Um,
All right.
so I'll just ask you if you don't mind, make yourself comfortable, feet flat on the floor. Good. Thank you for doing this. When you're ready, just taking a deep breath in, breathing all the way in, holding your breath for a second. See if you can let your eyes roll up. And if your eyes can roll up, see if you can let them flicker.
A little louder, please.
Oh, yeah. See if you can let them flicker. Let your eyes roll up. And then when your eyelids flicker, bring the relaxation of your eyelids to your eyes, into your head, your shoulders. Then take another deep breath in, breathing out over your lips, slowing your breath down. Then taking a second deep breath in, holding your breath for 1, 2, 3, and then slowing your breath down. And then 3, deep breath in, all the way in. And then slowing your breath down, breathing out, really taking your time. Breathing on your own, maybe trying to keep this breathing pattern of breath in and slow breath out, relaxing your forehead, the muscles around your eyes, the muscles around your mouth, shoulders, chest, belly, hips, knees, and feet. Whatever feeling of relaxation you have, let's double it, becoming twice as relaxed. And now 10 times as relaxed. And now 100 times as relaxed. Beautiful. The deeper you go, the better you feel. The better you feel, the deeper you go. Beautiful. As you go deeper now, imagine you're walking down a set of stairs, each step more relaxed. 5. Beautiful wooden stairs. 4. deeper relaxed. 3, deeper relaxed. 2, 1. And to the best of your ability now, deep, deep, deep sleep. Every time you hear the word, a little bit deeper now, deeper sleep and deeper sleep. Good. In this relaxed state where time is slowed down, you're calm and relaxed, I'd like you to go back to those dreams, that dream that was so wonderful and clear. Just going back to the dream and seeing if it can light up. See if you can feel it. See if you can see it. Bringing energy and chemistry to it. Bringing energy and chemistry. Beautiful. And now just breathing into it. Imagine that you're adding more color. Let the colors brighten. Let the feelings feel. And we're just doing a test to see if there's more there. Can the dream feel more real?
I don't feel very under.
Sorry, say again?
I'm not really under.
Under, okay. Do you want to come out?
I basically am.
Okay. Not much, no effect or not much?
No effect, really. I started to relax, but didn't go far enough.
Okay, maybe we just need more time.
Too quick. Yep.
Okay, I'm sorry about it. Yeah, I just
That's worth a try.
okay. I think it's might be worth a shot, probably under better conditions. But yeah,
Yeah.
maybe it might also depend. It might be somebody's voice that you would find more sexy than mine. So yeah. So
I don't think so. I don't think that's the trouble. It's just time and space right now, probably.
okay, okay. Um, I have to apologize. I have to go do this presentation. But so next week we do lots. Here's a suggestion. I'm going to bring in some people that are that maybe it's a little complicated because we need people's permission and okayness to do hypnotic orgasm. But you can also invite, if you have friends you want to invite, that they don't have to be great hypnotic subjects, because part of what we're learning is how to deal with people that are not good hypnotic subjects. And we'll deal with the different scenarios of good, not so good, and even challenging. So feel free to invite people. It's next week at noon, noon ET, 9 a.m. PST. Um, and any quick comments or questions? I'm gonna jump on the elevator in 3 minutes.
If you run into anybody in Kingston who would be willing to contact me, you can do so.
Okay, I'm not back for a little while, but yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. So sorry.
Okay.
I apologize again. Thank you, everyone. The great insights, some really valuable insights today, and we'll see you next week. Don't forget, and you can invite people, and we'll do hypnotic orgasms. All right.
Okay.
Okay.
I know. Good luck.
Good week. Bye bye.